There are a lot of random indie games on the Nintendo Switch, making it very easy for them to slip under the radar. This is something I should focus on more, and Pixel Game Maker series Game Battle Tycoon caught my eye thanks to its character designs. Game Battle Tycoon is a game about retro game tournaments in a post-human world. It's labeled as the Pixel Game Maker series because the developers of RPG Maker made a general video game maker program called Pixel Game Maker MV. I picked it up on Steam, and it's much harder to use than RPG Maker or Multimedia Fusion, but some people do use it, and to sort of promote it, I guess, some of the best Pixel Maker games are being released on Switch as part of the series. The actual developer is Retsuzan Games, who focuses heavily on retro-style aesthetics, and has a whole series of Game Boy-themed games they're releasing called the Game Buddy series. Anyway, in Game Battle Tycoon, you pick one of 6 different characters and compete in tournaments for 5 different retro-styled games. But there's a twist. At any time, you can leave your machine and beat the ever-loving crap out of your opponent. Beat on their machine, knock them down, and grab their controls to ruin their game. Yes, it's literally a video game about scumbag cheating tactics, and it's brilliant. They went all in, too. The combat is sort of beat-em-up-esque, no jumping and a basic mashable attack string, but pressing different directions and specials gives you 4 different special moves. However, these are limited by the red balls at the bottom of the screen that recharge slowly, so you can't just spam homing projectiles. You can block, there are combos, and depleting your opponent's life leaves them on the ground for an extended period of time, letting you really blaze ahead in the game or completely ruin theirs. Brawling also fills your super meter, which lets you do gaming supers, and is that an arcade gamer Fubuki reference? No, it's a Game Center Arashi reference. Same difference. Anyway, the gaming supers give each character a unique boost like increased speed or rate of fire, while also creating a protective barrier around them, preventing their foe from messing with them. So yeah, actual thought went into the combat, but how about the games? Real talk? A lot of these are pretty great, and the whole package reminds me heavily of Game Center CX, aka Retro Game Challenge on the DS, but designed entirely around versus play. The first of these games is a fusion of Space Invaders and Breakout called Invader Crush. Bounce a ball against a wall of invading robots while also shooting at them. At first glance, it seems pretty basic, but there is a slight twist. You can have 3 extra balls that you can release at any time, but once you drop them, they're gone. These could be an excellent way to blaze ahead in terms of score, but they can also be wasted if your opponent knocks you off the machine. There are multiple stages with different hazards and enemies, and actually, it really does work as a game. That said, this is easily the hardest of the 5 games, so the fact that you can't play the others until you clear this hurts a little. There's a debug option to fix that, but playing legitimately, this game is hard. But at the same time, it teaches you a lot because it really makes you focus on the brawling and how it can be used to beat your opponent. It's not as easy as just going over there and wailing on them because they can do the same to you. Figuring out the right time to leave your machine, the risk-reward of taking their controls, and so on, gives the game a surprising layer of strategy that I did not initially expect. This is tactical cheating, people. It's worth mentioning that the game isn't over until someone's score surpasses the others and it cannot be beaten, so if you run out of lives while having a score lead, you can still beat on your opponent to maintain that. But good luck with that, because the CPU seems to get higher scores than you in this game for the same amount of progress. I feel like I'm missing something with the scoring system. Literally rewatched the footage multiple times and I cannot figure out where the computer is getting these extra points from. The next game is Jewel Links. It's an NES Tetris-themed puzzle game that appears almost mindlessly easy at first glance. There's only 2 piece types, short and long, and all you have to do is match 2 of them of the same color. That's it. That's all it takes to make pieces disappear. However, you don't send your opponent garbage until you get a 10 combo. Now, you don't have to set it all up as one chain. Rather, it has a Tetris Attack Puzzle League Panel Depon style cooldown on its combos. If you make another match within that short time limit, it counts. That means this actually feels closer to Magical Drop in that it's less about the matches or setups and more about the sheer speed of it. Sending your opponent garbage is difficult, but it hurts. They're just given a long black piece that they then get to place, but can never get rid of. Which makes sense because the matches are so easy and sending garbage is so hard. But where this really works is, again, with the combat. It wasn't until fists started flying that I realized why this game was designed like it is. If this was just Tetris with the blocks falling, leaving your controls for even a second could screw up your whole game. Meanwhile, in Tetris, all it would take is one hard knockdown, grab the controls, and instantly fill your opponent's screen. Nah, by letting you manually drop blocks, albeit with a time limit, you can leave the controls for a moment, and the ease of making matches mean you have to put effort into filling up your opponent's screen and not accidentally giving them points. But wow, do those garbage blocks help in terms of messing up your enemy's screens. This game is stupid addictive, and I love it. A standalone version exists as part of the developer's Game Buddy series of Game Boy style games, but it's a bit different with sideways pieces and all. And oh hey, isn't that Zuribu's whole stars from whatever this game is in Street Fighter 4 and 5? Well, that's an unexpected guest appearance. Wait, I bet the crab is a guest character too. Anyway, the third game at first glance appears to be Head-On, which I appreciate because watching Lord BBH play through the entire MAME game library made me realize just how many Head-On clones existed. But this game is actually Head-On mixed with Bomberman and Splatoon. Here, you and your foes compete directly, running over dots to turn them your color, with the goal of having more of the playfield be your color than your opponent's when the time runs out. You can shoot at your enemy and also collect and plant bombs, which not only explode, but act as obstacles preventing movement. I'm gonna be honest, this one doesn't feel as good as the other two, but it's still quite enjoyable. The way the combat interacts is also super obvious. Get the lead and then beat the crap out of your opponent, preventing them from taking it away. If the games were assigned in terms of difficulty, this would be the first one. It's a much better introduction of the game. Also, it's based on a timer, so matches tend to be much shorter. Then we finally get to our complete clunker. The fourth game, Lucky Catch, is garbage. But it's the best kind of garbage. Super quick, easily exploited, and ignored garbage. Yes, it's a crane game, but strangely, it doesn't use the physics engine used in other minigames. It's very easy to grab items. The hitboxes are questionable. You can't use super moves, and you can beat on your opponent's machine, though, and the setup of the toys is always the same. What this means is that you can quickly figure out a strategy and just clear out the machine. Like, move the crane all the way to the right and press the button and you instantly get 3 toys every time. The tricky part is this one toy that's in a really awkward place with a bad hitbox. Once you figure out how to position that crane to get it though, it's over. Or, so it appeared. Upon further play for this review, this game probably works much better in actual multiplayer. See, crane games have a lot of downtime where you could walk away from the machine while the claw is picking up and moving the toys. This is a fantastic opportunity to beat up your opponent, or better yet, beat on their machine to make their claw drop their prizes. Against an actual human opponent, I could see this turning into an enjoyable struggle to defend your claw and attack your opponents. But against the computer, nah, just figure out the routine and move on. Next. Finally, we reach the last game, Space Blades, a competitive versus shooter. No, it's not Twinkle Star Sprites though, rather it's more Galaga-esque. You've got a player on each side of the screen while Galaga-style enemy patterns fly in parallel at them. Meteors and power-ups appear in the middle of the screen, and one player can shoot the other to deplete their lives. There's also a limited stock of super shots you can use, but they do not carry over between lives. The game lasts 3 stages with bosses, and whoever has the highest score at the end wins. Know how I said the last 2 games didn't feel as good as the first 2? Yeah, this one feels good. It's also hilarious because there's a pause between stages that the computer likes to try to attack you during, leaving their ship wide open and allowing you to deplete their stocks. That said, with 9 lives, it's a bit hard to fully run out, but this is indeed a darn fun game. To beat the game, you have to defeat 3 opponents of your choosing in each of the 5 games, and then you get a little bit of text for an ending and the credits roll. But there's a little bit more to it. Every opponent you beat nets you money, which can then be spent in town. You can either buy food that gives you stat boosts, untranslated stat boosts, but stat boosts nonetheless, or you can spend your yen on the gacha machine, netting you a collection of character profile keychains, sound tests, or even mini-games. Yes, there are still more games within this game, and you know what? I love it. It gives the game a real arcade gamer Fubuki sort of vibe where every type of game is appreciated, unlike real-life esports, which are understandably hyper-focused on a single game and getting really good at it. You can also go to the arcade to play any game against any foe, and the dojo to train in actual fighting combos. Overall, pretty fun package. That said, one bit of advice. When you start the game, activate debug mode from the options. Debug mode claims to unlock the full game, but in reality, it just unlocks all the games for versus mode, and deletes your save data. It does not unlock all the gacha prizes, and really, all those games should have been unlocked for versus in the first place. So okay, this sounds cool. What are the downsides? Well, the save system is a smidge confusing. There's only one save slot and you are locked into that character until you start a new game. Thankfully, all new games are New Game Plus, i.e. you keep the money and the gacha unlocks. Still gotta do the tutorial every time, but that's easily skipped through. If you wanted to start fresh, you'd choose erase play data from the options. That said, this game doesn't really have a lot of options, just erase data or debug mode, so anyone wanting to rebind keys might be disappointed. Speaking of which, the button layout is slightly awkward and does confuse me from time to time. I'd say much of this has to do with how entering and leaving machines works. You press B like a cancel button to walk away from the machine, but just walk up to it to grab the controls again. This can lead to some times where I accidentally leave the machine or struggle a little to grab the controls again. Personally, I would have had a dedicated grab leave machine button on one of the shoulders that would grab the machine if you were anywhere within a certain radius from it. As I said earlier, the order of the games is a bit odd. I know they designed it as a chronological order, but you literally start with the hardest game, followed by the second hardest, before everything suddenly gets way easier. Again, I wish they would have rotated games instead of doing one after another. Also worth mentioning, one time I played Duel Links, and as things started to get heated, I did experience some significant slowdown, though it didn't really bother me much. And of course, there's no online play. Not sure if you can do online play with Pixel Game Maker MV, as that's quite complex to code. I know the actual developer, Retsuzan, was even promoting just using Parsec on their Twitter, but good luck with using that on the Switch version. Beyond that, though, it's just general rough edges and missed opportunities. Like, you'll repeatedly see the borders for Retsuzan's Game Buddy series flash on screen briefly, or the instructions for Invader Crush flash on screen a second before the actual game's instructions appear. There's also numerous points where you can't back out, and putting the pause button on L is weird. And yeah, the way the sprite scaling and rotation looks is a bit off with those crisscrossy patterns. None of these ruin the game, they just make it clear it's not a project with a budget. As for missed opportunities, though, whoo boy! So, first of all, there's no way to play the games outside of competition. No single-player way to learn the game or just enjoy them. What's more, there's also no non-cheating option. I'd actually really like to play these games without attacking my opponent sometimes. The town is basically just a menu screen and the plot is sparse. What's there is great, but I feel like they could have made this game even better with a lot of the stuff that's already in it. Like, imagine a bigger town with multiple arcades, each of which focuses on one of the games. And you could play them solo there. It could be full of NPCs, too, who give different single-player challenges, like surpassing a certain score or getting to a stage on a single life. Then those arcades could have their own tournaments for each game, and those would be the non-combat ones, which are outside of the GBT League. Then why not have an underground fighting tournament where you just fight without the video games? Heck, the combat is rather beat-em-up-esque, so what if you walked around the back alleys of town and you could be attacked by street gangs and you fight them and get money and items from them? From there, you could have a more fleshed-out plot, too. I guess what I'm saying is, I really hope Retsuzan considers making a sequel. And I kinda want more entries in the games about playing video games genre in general. But putting that aside, what we have now is a delight, a collection of retro-styled competitive games blended with fighting scumbag elements to make a rather unique blend, highly reminiscent of Game Center CX / Retro Game Challenge on the DS. It has some rough edges, and that crane game is kinda questionable, but overall, I had fun. I give it a 3.8 out of 5. The game is available on Nintendo Switch for $15. There's also a PC version you can download off of Ichi.io, but it's a bit different. It does run smoother and seems more polished than the Switch version presentation-wise, but it's Japanese only. You gotta have your computer's region settings set to Japanese to prevent it from crashing on startup. And there's a bunch of odd differences, like having way more lives in Invader Crush, and all sorts of weird bugs, like the computer moving its paddle in Invader Crush in weird ways, or blocks in Duel Links getting stuck in the wall. One time the computer was just rapidly failing at Duel Links. Sometimes it works right, though, but it's weird sometimes. I'll leave a link to the Ichi.io version in the description, but if you can get it to run, do consider throwing the dev a couple bucks to perhaps fund a sequel. Because I want one. Anyway, this is Gel, and you've been Game Babbled. See ya.